Okay, guys. Now, let's do most evil good guys.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions. It's a common phrase, probably one you've heard many times before, and for a good reason. We've all started a course of action that we thought would be beneficial for ourselves or the people around us, but ended up blowing up in our faces. Thankfully for many of us, these actions
Okay,
probably
baby.
caused millions of deaths. The same cannot be said for the 5 people we're discussing today, each of which wanted to do some kind of good for the world, but ended up making it a worse place for everyone in it. These men have a collective body count well into the tens of millions, but you might be surprised to find how they got there. First up, we've got number 5, Alfred Nobel, the father of dynamite. If you feel like that name rings a bell, don't worry, we'll get to that. Alfred Nobel was a Swedish chemist whose scientific discovery helped define the 19th century, at least in terms of how they blew stuff up. Before Nobel came along, gunpowder was the world's explosive compound of choice, and had been for several hundred years. But here's the problem. Gunpowder was old hat, and while it was a stable chemical compound for everything from warfare to industrial applications, the world needed
So that's where they come from.
more of a punch. That's where the miracle of nitroglycerin came along. A significantly more powerful explosive concoction. Here's the big problem, though. Unlike gunpowder, nitroglycerin wasn't stable in the slightest and was the frequent cause of deadly explosive accidents. Few people knew this better than Alfred Nobel, whose brother Emil was killed in a nitroglycerin explosion at one of his father's factories. This motivated Alfred to direct his intelligence and his energies toward a noble goal, creating a new compound that could pack the explosive punch of nitroglycerin, but had the stability of gunpowder, preventing accidents like the one that killed his brother from ever happening again. But from the title of this video, you know this story doesn't have a happy ending. In 1867, Alfred happened upon diatomaceous earth, a porous sedimentary rock that had an extremely interesting property. It could absorb nitroglycerin. While the resulting compound was still terrifyingly explosive, it was stable, making it the wonder bomb that the warmongers and industrialists of the world needed. Nobel, ecstatic with his new creation, decided to give it the name dynamite, derived from the Greek word dynamis, literally meaning power. But Alfred, being a perfectionist, didn't stop there. As the years progressed and dynamite became a household name, he created an even more powerful and deadly version in 1875 by mixing nitroglycerin and nitrocellulose. Dynamite would later become synonymous with cowboys and prospectors, but perhaps its most iconic usage was in war, where it was used to blow countless people to kingdom come. Alfred had wanted to create an invention that would prevent unnecessary deaths like his brother's, and instead created a tool of mass murder. The man became so synonymous with facilitating violence in this time that when he mistakenly was declared dead, the headline of his obituary read, "The Merchant of Death is dead." Okay, we weren't actually being totally honest with you earlier. The story does kind of have a happy ending. Alfred Nobel was deeply affected by his premature obituary, realizing that his legacy was violence and warfare. This inspired him to use his blood money to found the Nobel Prize, which is intended to reward the best of humanity rather than commemorating the worst. Sadly, for a lot of people, the next entry on this list wasn't quite as philanthropic with his wealth. Number 4, Henry Ford, Hitler's role model. If you've ever been on an open road in your life, you've seen a Ford. From the Model T to the Mustang, Ford is one of the most iconic automotive brands in American history. Statistically, a lot of the car owners watching this video probably own or have owned a Ford car at some point in their adult life. They're just that common. The Ford Motor Company had a major role in building up the automotive industry in the United States.
So that's where Ford built
providing millions of jobs to
down Jeremy.
for over 100 years. Born to humble beginnings on a farm in 1863, Henry Ford pursued a career in business and engineering, allowing him to found the Ford Motor Company in 1903. After 5 years of research and development, they produced and released the iconic Model T, which rocked the automotive world and helped bring vehicles like this to the masses with standardized parts and assembly line innovations, allowing them to be built for far cheaper than other cars on the market without sacrificing quality. He was also a magnanimous boss, paying employees $5 a day, which was seen as insanely generous back in 1914. So you're probably wondering, this is the good side of this iconic American industrialist, but where does the evil come in? Well, a famous slogan for the Model T was that you can have it in any color you like, as long as it's black. Henry Ford didn't extend the same attitude toward people, though, as he was an avowed racist and anti-Semite. That's right, even for the early 20th century standards, Henry Ford was considered a massive bigot. There wasn't an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory he didn't buy into, and he was a vocal proponent of the American eugenics movement that was picking up steam at the time. Holding these views would become problematic in its own right, but it strays into deadly territory when you meet Ford's biggest fan, Adolf Hitler. Hitler found Ford's insane levels of bigotry inspirational, to the point where he quoted them in his infamous book Mein Kampf.
You know, you should not say that my culture because
Helped offer the budding genocidal dictator a sense of
he will go
international
jail
legitimacy,
saying that.
and some sources report that Hitler was interested in helping Ford to become, in his own words, the leader of the growing fascist movement in America. Ford's willful spreading of anti-Semitic propaganda helped lay the groundwork for the Nazi atrocities that were to follow. Number 3. Winston Churchill, Scourge of India. From Nazis to one of the world's most famous and cherished Nazi fighters, the bold-faced cigar-chomping iron-willed Winston Churchill, England's legendary prime minister during World War II, and one of the most well-known faces of the Allied forces. When people think of Churchill, they think of his inspirational radio addresses, like his famous "We will fight them on the beaches" speech, and his razor-sharp wit. Churchill was infinitely quotable, with nuggets of wisdom like "to improve is to change, so to be perfect is to change often." And courage is rightly esteemed the first of human qualities because it's been said it is the quality which guarantees all others. Churchill saved England from the terrifying Nazi forces in its darkest hours, while the country was being bombed and the Third Reich began to claim more and more of Europe on its rampage to rule the Western world. His part in orchestrating the legendary invasion of Normandy by Allied forces and liberating France from their brutal Nazi occupiers has earned him a permanent legacy as a hero to many. While he fell out of favor after the end of World War II, it's hard to find somebody who will tell you that Winston Churchill didn't help pull Great Britain, and perhaps even Western Europe, from one of the most dire struggles in modern history. Unless, of course, you're in India. While Churchill's goal of defeating the Nazis was undeniably a noble one, some of his methods for securing that win helped facilitate the horrible ends of millions of innocent lives. To be more specific, the Bengal famine of 1943 was a national tragedy that left over 3 million Indians dead from starvation. There were a number of factors believed to be involved in causing the famine: drought, crop infection, and Burma, which was a major source of rice imports for the Indian people, falling into the hands of the Japanese. However, more recent evidence shows that Winston Churchill likely had a hand in causing this tragedy. Indian journalist Madhushri Mukherjee found compelling evidence that there would still have been enough supplies to feed the Bengal region were it not for decisions of Winston Churchill's wartime cabinet. Because India was still under British colonial rule during the 1940s, they were still controlled by the British government, and as a result, the British government had full control over all their resources. Churchill diverted so many of these resources to the Allied war effort that he left over 3 million Indians to starve. And to add insult to injury, he blamed this mass starvation on the Indian people, attributing the lack of resources in India to the fact that Indian people, in his own words, bred like rabbits. Yikes. Number 2. Albert
That's
Einstein,
mean.
uncle of the atomic bomb. This is a man who is practically synonymous with the very concept of science and is up there with Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla, and Bill Nye on the list of
See,
scientists who became household
Albert
names. He made
Einstein,
gravity
he
waves
is the
with his general
scientist.
theory of relativity, his answer to the
And yes,
mystery of the
Einstein
photoelectric
is
effect,
a
his
German
evidence
name
for
too.
atomic theory. His contributions to science were so great that he won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921 and has inspired multiple generations of children to pursue knowledge for the betterment of mankind. Not too shabby for a bored former patent officer. He did, however, make one terrible mistake that went on to cause hundreds of thousands of deaths and cause an ongoing threat to the continuation of modern civilization even today. As World War II was reaching a fever pitch in 1939, Albert Einstein was signing his name to one of the most dangerous letters in human history. Despite being a pacifist, Einstein was one of the many experts who feared that Nazi Germany was on course to develop the first atomic bomb. As an exiled German Jew himself, Einstein knew that if they obtained such a weapon, there would be no mercy for anyone who dared to defy them. In order to make sure that the Allies weren't at a loss, the letter Einstein signed was begging the U.S. government to hasten their own development of an atomic bomb, laying the groundwork for the Manhattan Project that would later birth the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing thousands of innocent civilians. A quote often attributed to Einstein is, "I do not know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." And sadly, we have Albert Einstein partly to thank for that. Number 1. Gavrilo Princip, the world's deadliest assassin. Perhaps the least well-known person on this list, Gavrilo Princip was a teenage assassin with the best intentions who happened to kill over 37 million people with one magazine of handgun ammo. This Bosnian Serb nationalist fired the bullets that killed the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austria-Hungarian throne. Once again, to many modern Serbians, Princip's intentions were as pure and heroic as could be, freeing the Serbian people from their iron-fisted rule of the Austria-Hungarian Empire, and making a powerful statement about Serbian independence. He and a gang of like-minded individuals orchestrated a seemingly doomed assassination plan against the Archduke that ended up putting Princip right on the path of his incoming vehicle. The skinny 19-year-old Princip took his chance and blasted Ferdinand with his pistol until the Archduke was no more, standing his ground against his beloved country's tyrannical rulers. However, many credit the assassination of the Archduke as the match that ignited a powder keg of European political tensions. The result of this? World War I, killing almost 40 million and committing a generation of young people the world over to face horrific conditions and dehumanizing trench warfare. Literally millions of people dead from just a handful of bullets in the most idealistic intentions, making Gavrilo Princip the deadliest assassin who ever lived. If the people today have proven anything, it's that the purest intentions can still lead to the most nightmarish results, sometimes due to malice and other times due to a simple lack of foresight. So next time you have to make a major decision, try to think a few steps ahead, or at least try to keep in mind who you might be stepping on. Check out Shocking Study reveals how anyone can be evil.
Alright guys, wait a minute. Okay, I will see you guys in my 6th video, so I see you then.